I am ED-SKaR, and I'm pretty excited because I've just got this, the Imperial Guard Heavy Weapons sprue. I also have the Cadian Heavy Weapons Team sprue, which I won't be using. That's a lie, I will be using some of the arms. I also have, from Victoria Miniatures, some female torsos and female legs kneeling, as well as, of course, the camo cloaks and bayonets. And what that means, if you're paying attention to the fact that it says in the title of the video, I will be making Seena and Arilla as a heavy weapons team with the autocannon. And I can't wait any longer, and I need to put these together, so I'm going to switch camera view and start taking this apart. Seena and Arilla are what TV tropes would refer to as an ensemble dark horse, that being any character or characters that only appear briefly in a story, usually in passing in the background, that get a strong fan following. This could be fan art, fan fiction, explanations of their one small inclusion in the main story, and that sort of stuff. This heavy weapons team was mentioned in all of one paragraph by name, if memory serves, and with specifically named weapon that actually makes more sense than some of the others. And I'll talk about the inaccuracies of canon for this canon later. Well, let's talk about the heavy weapons sprue, and why I think it's a surprisingly good idea coming from Games Workshop. Each set of the heavy weapons team has a regiment-specific sprue and a generic weapon sprue. On the weapon sprue, you get one each of the 5 heavy weapons: mortar, lass, missile, bolter, and the autocannon that I'll be using. Which means if you bought the box containing 3 full teams, you can make 15 heavy weapons. And by swapping out some torsos and legs from the infantry squads, you can just make the full teams as well. I'm sure all of you Guard players have zoned out at this point, and it's all very well known, but I've only just found out about this, and so I'm excited. I only bought one heavy weapons team. I found one of those people on eBay who split things up, and usually they charge more than their proportional value, but this time it was nicely 1/3 of the box price. So overall, including postage, that's a pretty good deal for me. Well, aside from the weapon sprue, there's also the crew sprue. I'll be putting most of that away in my bits box, as today I'll be making a 2-woman team, whereas Games Workshop stubbornly only makes male models. For that, as I mentioned, I picked up some female torso and legs from Victoria Miniatures recently, with the express intent to build them up as Gaunts Ghosts. But now that I've stripped all of the pieces from the sprues, I need to file away the most important pieces. No, not those. Yes, those. In this project, there are a few risks that I am taking. I thought I had some good female heads in my bits box, so I didn't buy any from Victoria Miniatures. I also bought the separate cloaks, as they don't sell female torsos with cloaks. I did get some male torso and cloaks, they'll appear in another video, but the separate cloaks are also sized for male torsos, and so might not fit on the female ones. And, because of course there's an and, I also bought no arms. Victoria Miniatures does say that their male bodies are compatible with popular sci-fi plastic troops, but that their female ones aren't. The Cadian arms have these big pauldrons, so I reckon if I put these on slightly high, then the arms will look right enough with this big armour piece. Well, I've got most of the way built and the arms are on, which look... yeah, I'll have to check once they're painted to see if that ties them all in. But I do have to deal with the cloaks. The fact that I've raised the shoulders on these models makes the fit of the cloaks even worse than it would otherwise have been. But even more annoying than that is the crouched legs means the cloaks overshoot the ground and would make these very difficult to put on their bases. Well, a little whittling to the shoulders makes the cloaks just about fit, but to make them fit over the ground, that requires yet another risk. Cast resin like this can be heated to the point where it becomes slightly flexible. It is risky for 3 reasons. 1, you have to use boiling water and can scald yourself, hence my use of tweezers for the dip. Second, these pieces could shatter, sending fragments of resin into your squishy eyeballs. I do have goggles on. Third, your part could shatter and you destroy the part. And that is a risk that I am going to take. And by the way, these cloaks are wafer thin. They are thinner than my chances of becoming a world famous YouTuber and are equally as fragile. Well, I did manage to get the cloaks on, not quite how I wanted, but yeah, I guess they'll work. So now I root around for some heads. And my collection isn't what I thought it would be, but I managed to scrounge up a Sister of Battle head and another head from the Frostgrave Soldiers 2 set, and with a little cutting to the necks, they fit and they look just about right. So now finally we're in the point where we get to paint something, which you've all seen before. You know, black uniform, green cloak, stripes of camo, highlights, yada yada yada. Well, let's relax and talk about the characters instead and how I'm ignoring the lore. As I mentioned before, there is a paragraph, a single glorious paragraph that describes how these characters look. And there are some excellent sculptors and model makers out there who will painstakingly recreate every exact detail. They'll find the company that sells a head with the right cap, the right torso shape. They'll grab some green stuff and fill in all of the other details. Not just filling gaps, but making the entire thing seamless, complete model. But if I'm to make a video every week, I can't spend 2 months on one. So, perfectly happy to drop a little bit of accuracy for the sake of my ability to complete a model. I'm also happy to forgive a little lore inaccuracy. So, let's talk about guns. There is a somewhat famous little discussion about the Gaunts Ghosts book's inclusion of light machine guns, heavy machine guns, and light cannons that the ghosts themselves use. According to the all-holy lore of the Warhammer 40k universe, a heavy stubber would be the equivalent of a light machine gun or a heavy machine gun in modern terms. Something like an 8mm rifle round up to a 12.7mm cartridge. An autocannon is the equivalent of a 30 or 40mm fully automatic cannon that would usually be seen on vehicles in the real world, but could potentially be used on a carriage. While Dan Abnett spits in the face of the all-holy Warhammer lore, he regularly makes use of terms like .30 autocannon, well, 7.62 cartridge. In another book it becomes a .50 autocannon, 12.7mm. 40k lore would call machine guns in these cartridges heavy stubbers, not autocannons. And yet Arilla and Seena use, quote, a heavy stubber. So maybe the only time in the Gaunts Ghosts books that has a correctly named machine gun. Well, all of that is something that I really don't care about, even if I know all of the technical gun stuff. I love the Gaunts Ghosts books, and I've read a lot of Dan Abnett's other stories as well. Judge Dredd, Torchwood, Tomb Raider, lots of good stuff. So I have a lot of respect for both the amazing model creators I mentioned earlier and a great author. Combined with my obscure humour, I will give my female heavy weapons team the wrong gun on purpose. Now, aren't you glad I finished painting so we can talk about something else? So a thing about the way I remember this whole Warhammer game from back in ye olden days being played, when it was that I last played, sometimes your people get dead. And when they get dead, you got to take them off the board so they can push up flowers somewhere else. Well, the heavy weapons team is 2 soldiers on a single base. So what happens if one of them gets fethed and the other one's fine? Well, I'm sure there's an official way of doing this, but I'm doing my own idea, because of course I am. So I made this. It is a 60mm base, the same as the heavy weapons team, with a recess for a 25mm base, as per standard infantry model. You put your loader on the 25mm base, and glue your gunner and the gun to the main base. And at this point, I discover that Seena's arms aren't on quite the right angle. Well, fifth. It's all caked in superglue and painted. I really don't want to pull the arms off. So what could I do to fix that? Well, it's just that the back of the gun and the trigger yoke, which is in her hands, are at different heights. So all I need to do is raise one of them up to match the other, and all is well. So I glue down the tripod to the base and sandbag it in so that it doesn't shift under recoil, yeet about some rocks, and I'm going to build up a little knoll here to correct my little mistake. Strangely, that little raised section is the caked on texture paste I've cut off of my stirring spatula. Just layer after layer of PVA with stuff in. And with some extra texture paste all over the base, it does tie in fairly nicely. Now, I've seen some people make heavy weapons team bases as display amazing looking pieces, almost terrain pieces in some cases. Unfortunately, I'm running over time on recording this video, so I'm painting it in a fairly simple way. Essentially the same as my old basing video for the Ghosts that I posted a while ago. This new batch of texture paste has a lot more sand than my previous batch, which would be great for dry brushing if I wasn't utterly terrible at dry brushing. But with the quick spot of paint here and there, the base is done and the entire team is therefore done. And for some reason I can't say I'm entirely happy with it, and it might just be because I've spent so many models painting black fatigues. It's getting somewhat boring after 20 of them now. However, I may have to paint quite a few more. It's possible if I get some extra time after editing this video, or realistically after editing the next video, if I can catch up, I might come back and adjust some of the details, add highlights and shadows to try and make it a little more, I don't know, just a little more. I have mixed these in with some of the other models just to see what they look like as a cohesive unit, and they certainly fit the theme, so there's no real issues there. But what you might be seeing in the hero shots is actually a little nicer looking than what I've got here, or at least I hope so. But that's more than enough for one video. We've had a look at the Imperial Guard Heavy Weapons team and also some of the Victoria miniatures parts, which are really rather nice. So why don't you pop down into the comment section below and let me know what you think of the Heavy Weapons team, Arilla and Seena. And on your way past, there is some things in the description as well, some links to some other things I get up to, as well as a donation link to help keep me buying some of the rare and interesting and expensive stuff like this to make videos on. But with all of that having been said, I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.